In the previous module, we introduced you to the observation indicators that should be considered, noted, and recorded when monitoring assemblies, which include aspects related to the general description of the assembly, the specific elements of the assembly, and the policing of the assembly. In this module, we will focus on how to record and report your monitoring findings and on how to engage in advocacy efforts. The first video of this module will focus on how to record your monitoring findings following an assembly monitoring exercise, as well as how to draft and structure an assembly monitoring report. In the second video, we will discuss how to use such findings in your advocacy efforts to strengthen the right to freedom of peaceful assembly. To do so, we have invited fellow assembly monitors to speak about their experiences and provide some tips on how to record and report on your monitoring findings and use them in your advocacy efforts.
I am Rafael Ișcanian, Coordinator of Monitoring Peaceful Assemblies at the Helsinki Committee of Armenia.
My name is Alexandra, and I'm an assembly monitor at ODIHR. ODIHR has been engaged in monitoring the exercise of freedom of peaceful assembly in the OSCE region since 2011. Up to now, we have monitored over 100 public assemblies across more than 30 OSCE participating states.
Hello, my name is Jocelyn Rosnick. Previously, I served as co-chair for the Ohio chapter of the National Lawyers Guild. For over the last decade, I coordinated or served as a legal observer for mass Black Lives Matter demonstrations and at the 2016 Republican National Convention in Cleveland, Ohio. I believe assembly monitoring is absolutely critical to ensure freedom of peaceful assembly, and I'm really pleased to share my advocacy experiences with you.
My name is Denis Shadow. I'm a lawyer, data analyst, and human rights activist working for the Russian human rights media project OVD-Info. For more than a decade, OVD-Info has been engaged in the monitoring of detentions of protesters during peaceful assemblies across the Russian Federation.
Hello, I'm Anna Chapauri, project coordinator and the monitoring team lead at the Human Rights Center in Tbilisi, Georgia. I'm pleased to share our experience regarding the monitoring of public assemblies and hope this will assist you in your work.
First, let's talk about what to do with all the information you collected during a monitoring exercise. An effective way to record your monitoring findings is by compiling them in an assembly monitoring form. The information in this form should reflect what you have directly seen and heard during the assembly monitored. In Module 5, we emphasize the importance of impartiality and objectivity for assembly monitors. It is crucial that we base our reports on what we have directly witnessed and heard, avoiding any bias or preconceptions that may have influenced our observation. Remember to objectively describe your observation without further interpreting them. There are many ways to structure your observation in an assembly monitoring form, and this will greatly depend on the objectives you set out for your monitoring project. In order to help you develop a structure for your reporting form, one of our ODIHR assembly monitors will walk you through how ODIHR monitors reports their observations after completing an assembly monitoring exercise to help informing your own reporting approach.
As you can see, the first part of the monitoring reporting form includes crucial details such as the names of the monitored assemblies, the monitoring teams involved, as well as the date, time, and location of the event under observation. As a good practice, we also draw a map outlining the route of the assembly monitored. The second part of our form includes a detailed chronology of the events monitored, based on our observation indicators which were discussed in the previous module. This section comprises of observations such as the estimated number of participants, law enforcement officials, stewards, and media representatives that were spotted on site at a given time, but also police actions observed, as well as any observed engagement between law enforcement and participants or organizers. As much as possible, we also try to incorporate the visual materials we collected during the assembly monitoring exercise, such as pictures and videos. While doing so, we make sure to contextualize them by way of a written caption indicating what is happening in the visual and when it was collected. Putting together the chronologies of all the monitoring teams that were involved in the monitoring exercise will help the monitoring coordinator to get a clearer and more accurate idea of how the assembly unfolded. Following the chronology of events, we then provide a more detailed account of the monitoring indicators observed during the assembly. As described in a previous module, indicators can include elements such as the size of the assembly, its demographics and its key message, information on police presence and visibility at various stages of the assembly, including their units, location, equipment, uniform, and whether or not they were identifiable, and also the way that the assembly was facilitated by law enforcement, which can include measures such as preventive actions, arrest and detention, dispersal, and occurrences of use of force. Last but not least, we always try to reference relevant online media reports we can find related to the events monitored, as this might prove useful to reconstitute events or support and complement our observations. In case we come across issues that need clarifications, we also include some questions to be raised in follow-up meetings with relevant stakeholders, such as what was the exact number of police staff involved in facilitating the assembly, or what was the rationale behind the decision to disperse the assembly.
Drafting a monitoring form is a crucial process that should be carried out with the monitoring team members you were paired with, to ensure that all essential aspects you observe as a team are covered. As highlighted in Module 5, if any disagreement arises among team members regarding the observation findings, it is essential to handle it with care. Avoid pressuring your teammate to report in a particular way. Instead, focus on seeking more information to clarify the differences in perception. If the disagreement persists, make sure to record all views to ensure transparency and accountability. Remember, effective collaboration and communication are essential to achieve your monitoring objectives. As a monitor, it is essential to prepare your assembly monitoring form and to share it with your monitoring coordinator as soon as possible after the assembly monitoring exercise. This will ensure that your memory is still fresh while preparing it and that your description of the event is as accurate as possible.
Our monitors engage in monitoring by collecting first-hand information on any developments taking place during an assembly. They also document the events by taking photos or videos with their smartphones. Then, our monitors produce an internal report within a week following the monitoring exercise, which they then share with the rest of the project team.
After receiving the monitoring forms from all monitoring teams, the monitoring coordinator should proceed to compile and analyze the information gathered to produce an assembly monitoring report. This report can serve an internal purpose, but it can also be used as part of a broader advocacy strategy, which we will discuss in the next video. Let's hear from a fellow assembly monitor on how they use his monitoring reports in the context of their assembly monitoring project.
After collecting the internal reports prepared by our monitors, we combine them into a single, more detailed document for publication. Such a document, whether in the form of an interim or final report, will include information about several monitored assemblies and provide insights regarding trends and any challenges observed during the assemblies monitored.
Your observation findings should, whenever possible, be complemented by information gathered at meetings with relevant authorities, assembly organizers and participants, civil society, and any other relevant actors who can provide background information on the monitored event. Let's listen to a fellow monitor illustrating additional means for accessing this information.
Before publishing our reports, we request information from relevant public bodies, including local municipalities, as well as the assembly organizers. Whenever possible, we also ask individual stakeholders to fill in questionnaires relevant to our monitoring reports. Sometimes, meetings or phone conversations can also be arranged before the monitoring exercise.
You can also refer to trustworthy secondary sources, including media and civil society reports, to support your findings. But to maintain the credibility of your report and the transparency of your monitoring exercise, you should assess the reliability of the secondary sources carefully and reference your findings in footnote properly throughout the report. In your narrative, it is important to make the distinction between direct observation and secondary sources of information, as it helps evaluate the credibility of the information presented. If you want to learn more about verification and analysis, I invite you to have a look at our module on the topic as part of the Human Rights Monitoring e-course here on Freedom Lab.
In their internal reports, our monitors incorporate articles, videos, reports, and other types of information available in the media. After careful verification of this information, sources with relevant links are also annexed to the monitor's internal reports. This way, our monitor's findings can also be incorporated into more substantial analytical documents published by the Human Rights Center. The authors of such publications can rely both on the internal reports prepared by our monitors, as well as publicly available information disseminated by credible external sources. On several occasions, we have also cited publications and reports from other civil society organizations and from the Public Defender of Georgia.
To monitor detentions, we have a 24-hour hotline that every detainee or witnesses of detention can call. In addition, we have a special online board where everyone can report a detention. We also monitor the publications about detentions in open sources. We carefully correlate and verify all collected data, and then we publish it.
The National Lawyers Guild typically helps coordinate a jail support hotline that anyone arrested can call. Assembly monitors will distribute this number to protesters in advance of any demonstration. We encourage protesters to write any important numbers, including the jail support hotline number, on their arm with a thick marker pen. The jail support hotline is critical in helping to keep tabs on how many protesters have been arrested and under what charges. This can also help with coordinating any mass legal defense, or even so family members can determine if their loved ones have been arrested.
The way you structure your assembly monitoring report is crucial. Although the structure will vary very much depend on the objective of your monitoring project, it is important to ensure that your report is readable and accessible. At ODIHR, we recommend to include the following elements in your assembly monitoring report. First, your monitoring report should always include an executive summary of your findings and your recommendations. The executive summary is usually the first part the reader will go through, and therefore it needs to be compelling. Second, it is crucial to include your monitoring methodology after the executive summary in your report. This section should explain the techniques and tools utilized in gathering information, such as direct observation, desk research, interviews, as well as the team composition. This will increase the report's credibility and demonstrate the thoroughness of your research. Third, after your methodology part, you should look into the international and domestic legal and policy framework related to the right to freedom of peaceful assembly, relevant to your monitoring exercise. What are the main freedom of assembly standards applicable to the assembly you have monitored? Have these been respected, protected, and fulfilled by authorities during your monitoring exercise based on your observation? Then, in fourth position, you should always get into the body of your report, which should include the details of what you have found out during your monitoring exercise, namely your findings, as well as an analysis of these findings, based on which you will draw your assessment and conclusions. That will, for example, include a description and analysis of the police action during the assembly and how the assembly participants reacted, the action of the participant during the assembly, information about media presence, and etc. When formulating your findings and assessment, remember that the direct observations collected during your monitoring exercise might not give the full picture of how the assembly was conducted, as your monitoring teams will not be able to be everywhere at all times during an assembly. This is especially true for large assemblies.
While writing the report, we always include examples of good practices observed during the monitoring, encouraging the police to accept such behavior as an established modus operandi. For instance, examples where the police facilitates counter-demonstrations between government supporters and opposition in a human rights compliant way would be highlighted and referred to in future cases in order to assess police actions with more confidence. Similarly, in case of a grave violation of the right to freedom of peaceful assembly by the police, we would provide examples of past similar cases where the police acted appropriately. And this way we illustrate how the police is capable of fulfilling their functions with less intervention.
While it might differ depending on the issues covered, our report structure is generally centered upon analysis of the information collected during our monitoring. For instance, our reports provide an analysis of the main challenges identified during the monitoring, such as excessive use of force by law enforcement. We also highlight the efforts made by law enforcement officers to facilitate the assembly where applicable.
Finally, your report should include clear, concise, and actionable recommendations based on the conclusion of your report and on international and regional standards. These recommendations should address specific gaps and challenges, as well as provide examples of good practices and be tailored to specific relevant actors, namely actors who can take action to address the particular issue at stake.
By reporting, we formulate each recommendation to be directly addressed to a specific authority or authorities with full mandate on the issue in question. Is the issue a matter of municipal or national authority? Is it the police or other law enforcement body? In this way, it may be harder for the recipient to dodge responsibility for addressing the issue. If available, it is helpful to check each recommendation against the National Action Plan on Human Rights to identify relevant actions and state bodies responsible for them. Our goal is to tailor the recommendations in a manner that they would serve as an invitation for dialogue and cooperation, rather than resembling judicial verdict. Ultimately, we want to bring positive change. In most cases, the final key is in the hands of the authorities.
At the Human Rights Center, we believe that it is important for all recommendations to authorities to be as specific and targeted as possible to ensure the best likelihood that they are taken up. We address recommendations to various institutions, including law enforcement agencies, the government, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and the Prosecutor's Office, depending on the circumstances of each assembly.
For a detailed guidance on how to properly draft your recommendations, we invite you to watch the video displayed on the screen. This video notably goes through the main aspects to bear in mind while drafting recommendations. Namely, this recommendation should be based only on the conclusion of the report. They should be action-oriented, which means that they should address specific problems. They should be actor-oriented, which means that they should address relevant actors. But they should also be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. That's what we call SMART recommendation. They should also be separated by topic or by actor. And finally, they should specify how your organization will follow up on their implementation. Please also take some time to have a look at the tips displayed on the screen, which will help you in your drafting process. Once ready, your Assembly Monitoring Report will allow to document the degree to which freedom of peaceful assembly is respected and protected over time. And your recommendations will form a baseline for subsequent engagement with relevant state authorities, civil society, and potentially even the wider international community. In the next video, we will focus on how to use your monitoring findings in your advocacy efforts to strengthen the promotion of the right to freedom of peaceful assembly.